Hi, Ronald. Hi, Bassil.
Hi.
Welcome to this LinkedIn Live. So as mentioned, we are here to talk about PRRC. But before that, I just want maybe to have just an introduction of yourself. So, Ronald, maybe first, you are from Emergo, but there is some transition here. So, can you just introduce yourself quickly and then explain maybe a bit more about you?
Yes, I'm Monier. Thank you. Yeah, I've worked for Emergo for 9 years, and on the 1st of June I'll start for myself as a consultant. And yeah, it has been great fun working for Emergo. I can really recommend that. So if you're looking for a next step in your career, Emergo should be one of the options you consider. It's a great company.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I've been the last year and a bit more the PRC for Emergo. So yeah, that has been an interesting experience.
Yeah, so you know a lot about PRRC role, and being a part of this organization, this big organization, and then also helping about this role, which is really great. And we have Bassil Akra, well known also. So hi, Bassil, and can we have a quick introduction maybe also?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Munir, for inviting and for hosting us here today to talk about PRRC. Bassil Akra, my name, and I'm CEO of Akra team, and happy to be with you today to discuss the PRRC topic. So we as an organization, we consult manufacturer and support them in the implementation of MDR and IVDR, and then I can share some insight on where our experience are with this activity, as well as with my role as part of TEAM-PRRC, share some input about what we are doing as an association on a European level to make sure that the interpretation of the requirement is consistent.
Can we just maybe have also a short introduction of exactly what is TEAM-PRRC, who is inside, and what is exactly the roles that you are? I mean, this association, which role it has exactly? Because I know that a lot of people are maybe looking for some support as PRRC, and maybe TEAM-PRRC can be one of the places where they can go for this support.
Yes, sure, Monier. So like every important key function in the European system, there was a decision by, let's say, a key subject matter expert to develop TEAM-PRRC as a European association. The intention was actually to make sure that the voice of the future role of PRRC is heard by the European legislator. There is a representation on the European level. There is an organization who is supporting the interpretation, supporting by preparing guidance, templates for contractual agreement, for appointment letters, helping clarifying the questions. And this is led by Elaine, who is also with us as an attendee today.
Yeah.
And she decided to call to the board multiple key subject matter experts. And part of them are actually Ronald and myself. We still have additional people also involved. But we are today here to help you also understand about what we are doing to support the system. So we have a lot of members who are already part of the organization. So we train, we help understanding the requirement, we develop the templates which are needed by our members, and keep also on the European level the representation to make sure that the legislators are not interpreting the requirement in a way which would not be doable for our members and who we are representing.
So just maybe a clarification, anybody can be a member of TEAM-PRRC. It's not reserved to some expert or to some European regulators. It's everyone. I am a PRRC, so I can be a member, or anybody can be a member of the association.
We welcome everyone to apply, and we are looking for having more people part of the membership for the European Association, because we want to make sure that we hear everyone's issues and help everyone. You can't be, not everyone will be part of the board of TEAM-PRRC, but they will be member in this organization association to help everyone exchanging with each other, having a platform to benefit from it, and to get actually your voice listened by having a combined communication to the European level to make sure that everything that we are facing is transferred on the European level.
Great, thank you for that. As I have already said at the beginning, so we are celebrating actually the 1 year of MDR, and we are celebrating also the, if I can say, the first days of IVDR. So it's like a good date for today. What I wanted to hear from you, and maybe you can start with you, Ronald. What is your highlight, if I can say, after 1 year of MDR, and maybe what are the challenges that you see for the IVDR that is just starting now?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question. When I started my role as the PRC, I more or less had to develop it myself and create my own appointment letters and documents and templates, which initially looked quite fun. But yeah, then it comes to actually making it work, and that's that's a different thing. It took some, should I say, convincing before I became a frequently invited to management meetings. Okay. And yeah, yeah, that's how it works, right?
Yeah, I see.
And then, of course, it's always careful what you wish for. Then during those meetings, they said, "Oh yeah, this is a bit of a problem. Ronald, do you think that's compliant?" And suddenly you get that ball thrown back at you, and yeah. But I think over the year we have developed a way of understanding. So if there were issues, I got some some warnings ahead of the meeting, so I could prepare. I could look into it, and at the same time, if I knew there was a potential issue, I could jump into that. And we have had some issues with, for example, like a client. They were no longer an AR client for the authorized representative Emergo Europe, and they were still using our name on the label. So what to do? And yeah, and that took some work and convincing towards that ex-client to make sure that went well. I mean, you probably hear for that from the first time because it was completely kept out of the press and out of all attention. But yeah, it happened, and so making sure that worked. Yeah, we've had a few cases where the option of terminating the agreement, terminating the mandate, has been listed as a potential outcome. Okay. And I think that worked very well within the organization. Everybody immediately understood this is serious, and we need to make sure that it works. And as a team, we managed to make that work, and these clients are still with us. So yeah, I think that by jumping in on that early on, we managed to avoid a problem rather than me having to solve a problem or cleaning up a mess afterwards. And I think that is a clear sign of the PRC working. Spotting in an early stage something may go wrong, something may be an issue, and then start avoiding that.
Yeah, I imagine that, yeah, during that year, there was a lot of up and down also because of this transition of regulation, transition of understanding, interpretation, which makes it a bit difficult also for a lot of organizations to reposition and to put everything in place here. For you, Bassil, this year, how did you find it?
So let me go back to your initial question, Munir. You said we are celebrating the MDR 1 year. We are celebrating the start of the IVDR, let's say, grace period. Let's name it like that. So for me, I'm really surprised everyone is celebrating and how they could celebrate, because reality is actually the past year plus the new upcoming years. We know what is coming in front of us, and we see it already happening in the same way like the MDR was actually happening in the past year. So the MDR reached the date of application. A lot of guidance were missing, and they are still missing. A lot of puzzle pieces were still missing. And now we are paying back for this fact because manufacturer who got their MDR certification, and those are like very few number of manufacturers, are required again to correct because they classified the product incorrectly, or they had actually an approval based on an interpretation which wasn't actually the interpretation that should be, as the MDCG is telling us today. So this means that the year was actually a lot of connected with a lot of challenges. First of all, to find a notified body, to get your approval. And then you are surprised again after a period of some months when a guidance document comes out that actually your compliance was not based on the correct interpretation, and you have to repeat the same task. That's why celebration for me can be just done when we get the healthcare system in Europe under control, and we know that the essential devices are available again under a new legislation to serve the patients from a diagnostic and medical device purpose. IVDR, I would not celebrate it. I think a lot of people talk about celebration because it's now there. I think we can also here consider the same effect that we are seeing. I will just celebrate when people start thinking about the patients, when we start thinking about patients as a centric of our decision making, and stop actually implementing bureaucratic requirements, which are adding a burden and forgetting by the end of the day the importance of having devices for the healthcare system. So IVDR started. How many guidance we got now? We started to see the same waves coming in with the IVDR. So we can expect 60 to 70 additional guidance in the upcoming years. So which means more on clarity. The only good thing for all our attendees, it's a job protection for all of you for the future. This is a celebration that you can do. All other things are not a celebration.
Yeah, I mean, just to say, I use the word celebration just because we talk about an anniversary and it's for that. But I agree with you. I mean, I was with Ronald in Barcelona for the MedTech forum in Barcelona 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it was exactly the same thing that we heard about the fact that, yeah, we have, for me, what we can say a good regulation. The only fact is the infrastructure behind it is not in place. It's making everybody frustrated. But yeah, it's true that there is a lot of things that are missing, which can make it better. But yeah, it's so I don't know which words we should use instead of celebration. But actually, they are born, they are here, so we have to deal with them exactly. In terms of PRRC now, so we have now since 1 year on the regulation to have a PRRC. So my first question. I see already that people have already some questions. So my first question that I wanted to ask you is, from when is it mandatory to have a PRRC? Or is it mandatory to have a PRRC? Or I mean, is there a date now we say this date is the date where the PRRC should be hired and appointed within your organization? So
let me start. Perhaps Ronald can follow up on this to give you some insight. So at the beginning, when the MDR and IVDR were published, the interpretation was that the PRRC is required from date of application of those regulations, because there are some pieces and bits of the PRRC obligation which are connected to the transitional provision of Article 120 and Article 110 of the IVDR. Now, then we got the MDCG, and this is always like, surprise, surprise, your interpretation is wrong, who was telling actually that those requirements are just connected with the certification of a product. So when you're declaring conformity to a regulation, so you would need them then when you apply to a notified body for MDR and IVDR certification. This is where the clarity came in. So now, my recommendation is actually, even if the MDCG is telling you don't need it immediately, you need to structure your system. You need to start letting the people, train the people, prepare the people, and do all of these activities. So independently of what is required, what is not required, my recommendation is always start working on establishing the system to make sure when you apply to the MDR that the system is already running and you can justify how you are showing compliance. Ronald, do you want to add some points to that?
Yes. First, I mean, in my view, that interpretation is not right. In Article 120.3, talks about devices and about the certification of devices, it does not talk about economic operators, and it refers to Article 5 about the devices and the certification of devices. Again, Article 5 is not about economic operators. So how on earth they think you can just link the economic operators to a device certification? I don't know. It doesn't work for me. But okay, it's there. So now we have a problem, and and I think there's an issue. If you're working as a PRC now on legacy devices, make sure you're well covered. Because if Article 15 does not apply for legacy devices, Article 15.5 also doesn't apply, and that's about protection. So if you start working as a PRC and if you start making comments to management about legacy devices, make sure that you have an agreement that Article 15.5 also applies for legacy devices, because otherwise you may end up in problems. And of course, the vast majority of companies will not have a problem with that. But we have all seen 10 years ago the PIP case. I've not seen any celebration there around 31st of March, but I think that's justified. But 10 years ago, we had this PIP case breaking through. I mean, suppose you would be working there as a PRC now. You may end up in a discussion where you're sitting in front of someone from a notified body or a competent authority asking, so what do you know about this legacy device? And then your boss turns a computer screen with an email from the company lawyer. If he opens his mouth, we'll shred him to pieces. Okay, what do you do? I mean, and that's a problem. The MDCG is putting is creating a potential situation where PRCs will be heading into. So make sure you're covered. Make sure that if you are working in a company with legacy devices, that Article 15.5 also applies for legacy devices.
But
that's my tip.
Who is defining that? It's the company, or it's? I mean,
you have to agree that if you put it in writing, if you have an agreement on that, it's fine. Mm-hmm. But Article 15.5, it's a requirement, so it applies for MDR devices and IVDR devices. That's fine. And in all other situations, it doesn't apply. It does not apply for a PRC for an authorized representative.
Okay.
It's not. Yeah. So again, if you're working for an authorized representative, make sure Article 15.5 also applies for you. If you put that in writing, if you both agree on that, it's fine. But you need to add that specifically.
Okay, so as you are talking about some maybe problems, if I can say, that can happen for the PRC and to be careful, there is a question from Romain, who is asking what are the moral and criminal responsibilities of the PRC in relation to the management of the company? Who can be legally prosecuted in the event of a problem? Does the PRC need some specific insurance? So is this also something that the PRC should be careful on, related to getting also the right protection on their agreement or on their assignments or things, so that they cannot be prosecuted for something that they have not agreed on?
So, well, should I take that? Should I start? Okay. There are two things to it. First, if you look at what competent authorities in general will do, and they will not go after the PRC if there's an issue. Unless, of course, as a PRC, you have been grossly negligent or malicious. But if you just do your job, you have nothing to fear. But you may have patients or relatives of patients who suffer damage that go after the PRC, or other companies that go after the PRC because of God knows what. And they know where to find you because you're listed in UNAMED. And then you need protection. So from that perspective, make sure that you have a good coverage. So if something happens, you have your legal costs are covered by the company. And because otherwise you're a sitting duck.
So when we say covered, do you need to have your personal insurance for that, or it's the company insurance who is taking care of this?
The company insurance should be covering the PRC as well. I at Emergo had an officers and directors insurance, including legal assistance, and and that will be continued after I left because of things may pop up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's something you need to take care of.
I think we need to differ between two aspects. You have the personal liability, so where you as a professional person do not do your job according to the rules. So every person, if they deviate from the requirement by themselves because they didn't do their job according to the rules, or they just got like influence financially or whatever by the company, and they decided to shift from the rules, they will be let's say under legal responsibility by themselves. This is why you would do a personal insurance to protect yourself. In addition to this, every device is actually under the legal obligation of a medical device manufacturer. So if a manufacturer put for you a frame which is not legal, they have to take actually the coverage from a liability point of view. So you have to have an insurance and they have to insure you. We from TEAM-PRRC, we discussed this topic in a very intensive way, and we created a recommendation, and we have also a recommendation on the insurance level. And our recommendation is the starting point to create a contract which is addressing those points, which you clarify with your employer from the beginning. So you should make sure, I mean, if you are an internal, we have internal PRC, external PRC, you need to make sure that all of these duties, responsibilities, and obligations are clarified in the contractual agreement. And you need to say who's going to be covering also the insurance. Is it you or is it the manufacturer? And then if the manufacturer is covering the insurance, they will cover the insurance of the professional working. But if you are actually doing a mistake during your work, this would be your personal insurance which need to jump on it. So you need to make sure that you consider that, you discuss that with your insurance. If you need recommendation, we from TEAM-PRRC have negotiated with the various insurance, and we can help you also getting in contact with the right insurance to get yourself covered.
I think it's great because I had also the comments from a lot of people that were asking, do I need to have my own insurance, etc. So this point then is yes, you should. Yeah, I'm happy that TEAM-PRRC already had reviewed, if I can say, some insurance company, because it's also the next question, who can insure me? And I suppose if you arrive to an insurance and say, I am PRRC, I'm doing this and do that, can you insure me? They are looking at you with big eyes and say, what are you talking about? I'm not on this business. I have no clue. I mean, do you have a car? Do you have a house? No, it's me. You have to insure for this and that. I mean, I suppose you had also with TEAM-PRRC this kind of discussion with some insurance.
I mean, there are a lot of insurance which are covering service providers. So it's not something completely new. Now, you are right. This new role is new, but in some member states, it's an established role. So, for example, in Germany, they had a similar role over the years. In pharma, there is such a role since many years. So this is like very important that it's not completely unknown, but you need to make sure that you explain to the insurance what is this role for, and to share with them actually the risk connected to it. And this is especially for external service provider who are acting as PRRC for a lot of companies, or for PRRC acting within the company, and they have a responsibility for a huge portfolio. Then the insurance will be a funny part, because then they see how big is the risk, and then they may decide to say, you as a person, you are too risky for us, so we will not take you. Or your rate will be very high with regard to that insurance. This is why you need to understand that early in the process before you negotiate a contract with a company, and then you have to pay on it just from an insurance point of view.
Great. We have also a question from, I don't know who, because there is no name. So in terms of the time, the amount of time that the PRC has to be available. So we talk sometime about you have to be available 24/7, even during holidays, etc. So I mean, is there some kind of rules here to say, yes, you have to have a PRC available every day of the company is working? and you have to have a deputy, and you have even during the night at 3 a.m. you have to be available to be reached, etc. So is there a rule for that? Maybe Ronald?
Well, yeah, we've looked into that, but basically, I mean, we were waiting for the guidance document to explain what means permanently
and continuously available,
and continuously available, and they said, well, that means permanently and continuously. So basically, that means that we can set that up ourselves. We can do our own interpretation here, and I think. Whatever contract you have, especially in terms of external PRCs, it should not be limited. You should not have to say, well, there's a maximum of 5 hours per month. You could say, we estimate it's, let's say, 60 hours per year on average. So it's on average 5 hours per month. And if you go over that, then we can have a discussion on additional hours. That's something that you can agree on, but it's not limited. As a company, you agree that if you go over time, yeah, there will be extra. You can be charged extra for that. So that being permanently and continuously available, yeah, in terms of being available in hours. But I mean, most companies are only open from 9 to 5, right? And outside that time, how on earth could a PRC be available then if the company isn't open, right? So it is a bit of a strange way of wording it, but I interpret it as there's no limitation to the hours, but you can agree on an average number of hours to be spread evenly per month, basically.
Okay.
So I think, let me add, I think what Ronald was mentioning is all true, but we need to consider multiple factors next to that. So the counting of hours is not the most important thing for me. There are other measures which you need to consider. You need to consider which risk class am I dealing with. You need to consider the availability of the company. So companies produce products not just like on a day shift. Some of them, they have at night shift, some of them they have 3 shifts, which you need to consider as well. You need to consider also the portfolio that you are covering, because you could have like 1 device, class 1, or you can have 100 devices covered by that company. And then you need to decide, can I, as a PRRC, deliver my job in a reasonable way as one single person for such a company? So what I saw by a lot of external PRRC, and this is like a mistake happening very often, they sign contracts. There is no alignment on what they can do and what they can't do, because the manufacturer, it's based on a quality management system, actually basic requirement, need to define how much capacity would I need with regard to a specific obligation. And just having like one PRRC for a huge number of products, and this same PRRC is delivering service to 100 additional manufacturers, and this is one single person, then you can put a question mark next to it. So I think by selecting your PRRC, internal or external, you need to define how much can I give it to one single person? Is that capacity sufficient to meet the requirement? And this is important because you need to have a buffer time. So I think the 5 hours are one example to say 5 hours per month. You can set like a minimum expectation of being available, but then you need to have an ability to scale it. So if you get like an urgent request, an incident happening on the market, you need to be involved, you need to react. If there is a manufacturer planning a study, you need to have your time available. If they are launching a new product, you need to be available. All of these things need to be defined, and you need to say, what is your role? Is it overseeing, or are you involved in every activity? And all of these gonna be defining how much time would I allocate for a specific manufacturer. So to the 5 hours, it's not the 5 hours, it's being specific, justifying the capacity availability for an organization by considering all of these factors which I just mentioned.
No, I think it's great, and it's clear that we are not talking about just maybe a small company, but maybe a big one with multiple shifts, etc. So, are we? I mean, maybe your opinion. Do we need I mean, is one PRRC sufficient, or you should always have 2 or 3 like delegate, deputy? I know because in pharma industry we have the responsible person plus the deputy of the responsible person there, etc. So is this the same thing that we have to go for here?
Deputy is something which you need. It's an essential function in an organization, which, like you said, this person or would need to go on vacation. Yeah. This person is allowed to be sick. And you can't say, actually, they have to be always there. I don't care. If they are dying, I'm going to take them and they have to do their job. So this is not possible. This is why an organization needs to define who is the person responsible and what will happen in the absence of that person, who will be the deputy who's going to be taking that responsibility. Now, if you need one or more person, depends again on what I just explained before. How big is the task? How big is my organization? How much product do I have in my portfolio? What are my plans? All of these things will play a role in deciding how many PRRC would I need as an organization. And if I have more than one already in the organization, then I can build my system in such a way to have PRRC plus deputy out of my available resources instead of having always double resources for the same task.
No, I think it's great. And we have also another question that is also interesting from Joseph, which is asking, can PRRC duties be delegated to several sub-PRRC? So we know that we have a PRRC task, which are like 4 or 5 tasks that are mentioned, 5 tasks or 6 tasks that are mentioned. So can we have one PRRC for each task? Can the one PRRC do everything? Or can we have one PRRC and sub-PRRCs that are doing some task for us? I mean, how is this hierarchy or organization can be built there? Ronald, maybe?
Well, yes, but let's be very pragmatic about it. What I see as a task of the PRC is also to make sure that the tasks that the PRC must oversee can be performed by the staff.
Yeah.
So that means that as a good PRC, you provide training and guidance, or make sure that staff gets the right training so they can do their job. That's basically part of the role of the PRC, to enable specific tasks to be performed. And if that goes well, it's a very easy job. You know it works, it's there. You only have to verify if. And you can do that on a sampling basis that the work is done well. Having said that, if you have a larger organization, you can have a team of PRCs where someone is officially the PRC with sub PRCs, all working together and sharing tasks and communicating. Yes, of course, it can be done. I recommend making sure it's set up well. You can decide if you want to have those sub-PRCs also listed in UDAMED or not. If they're listed in UDAMED, you must specify which tasks they have. That can be that can be a bit of a problem, because sometimes you have organizations where multiple PRCs look after the same products or the same processes. So that can be a bit of an issue. But because I think what they wanted to achieve is that you know which PRC is responsible for what within an organization. Yeah, make sure that distinction is clearly made. But apart from that, yeah, you can choose various ways to solve this working together. Yeah,
great. Bassil, so for this organization that, as we said, we have PRRC for that. So I hear a lot of time that Ronald was saying that, yeah, they are listed on UDAMED. Just wanted to ask you, because I mean, we had, I think, this discussion 1 year ago when we talked about UDAMED. So the PRRC is listed on UDAMED. And recently, I have had some customers that were asking me, Munir, it's strange. I'm receiving a lot of calls, a lot of emails from people, etc. Why that? So, and we discovered that, yeah, because they are listed on UDAMED. So, do you think this is a problem that the PRRC with his email address, with his phone number, with his postal address, is it a problem really?
It is for that person a problem for sure, but it is actually the main intention of the medical device and IVD regulation. They wanted to achieve transparency. And to achieve transparency, they said, we want to also include the PRRC with the contact details available on the webpage of EUDAMED, which is still voluntary for the moment, but you see already a lot of registration in EUDAMED. And it is, by the way, not just the email address. You have the phone number, you have also the address, which is a private address of that person who's actually registered that in EUDAMED. So you can get emails, but you can get also people knocking on your door and asking you, what did you do? And this could happen. Now, it is the risk of transparency. Transparency can be also misused by a lot of organizations. And I think your customer is receiving a lot of emails because a lot of organizations who see these information, they start like advertising, they start telling you their view. You have a lot of people that like to communicate. This is a risk which is going to happen now in this situation. But there is a benefit also that the PRRC could be made aware about a problem happening with their device, where they got the signal, especially with regard to PRRC, that they are delegating a lot of activities to sub-PRRC, like it was mentioned before. Then they got aware about something that they didn't see by themselves in a signal on the market.
So in terms of PRRC, so as we said, so we can see this person. We know this person can be or hired by a company, or you can, on certain cases, have some consultants. So it's also something that can be happening there. We have a question here from Prince that is a big one. So, hi, what if the PRRC is appointed by the company themselves and he or she is employed by the company? Wanted to know how he or she can remain unbiased or not suffer any disadvantage while doing his job. This is not very clear in the MDR, and many companies are doing that. Not sure if this could be a conflict of interest. So I think what is mainly saying here is normally the PRRC should be independent in terms of his decision and not be, if I can say, pressured by any management in terms of what he should do for the PRRC role. So the question is, how can he do that, knowing that he's reporting to a CEO that is maybe saying him not do this, don't do that, etc. So what can be your answer to that?
Ronald, do you want to start or shall I?
Yeah, sure. Okay, I can start. Well, I think what I always recommend is that if a company is looking to appoint an internal PRC, don't look for management or middle management, because then they will be checking their own job. What you need is someone with a lot of experience, but at work floor level. And you typically find that regulatory experts, you always have these old guys, male, female, that have worked there for a long time, not interested in management, and look at me, yeah, and
we can confirm old guy, huh?
yeah. And so then you can establish a good contact from the working floor, and I think that's very important. And I just finished for Emergo a wrapping up of a report as a PRC, and I spoke with several people that just do the daily job, work floor level. I'm not in a management position, so they were sharing things with me that they would not share with their manager. That was interesting, and I think that created some findings. I'm not saying that Emergo has a problem, but there are some issues that can improve the way how things are set up, and there is a potential risks of something going wrong. So yeah, and that came out of those discussions, open discussions with what was happening there. So internal people, employing internal people, yes, you have a potential issue of bias and also of conflicts of interest. I think you should openly discuss that. Could there be a conflict of interest? How can you avoid that? If you look at the DPO, the data protection officer, the way how that is set up, they have to be independent and that is in the guidance documents. You can find some very good guidance on how that's being set up. And I think if you're worried about that, just look at how that's done with in the data protection world. That the DPO is truly independent and can act as a source of information for management.
Yeah, to add to this, looking to the question of Prince, I think what is important is a clear contractual agreement, which is enabling that person to do their job without influence. What you should take care of, and this is where I saw a lot of problems happening, that the management doesn't put KPI for the PRRC, which could influence their decision-making in a wrong way. So what I mean with that, like putting like a big financial bonus, which is asking the PRRC to be influencing time to market, which means that they should get the product quickly on the market without considering safety and performance. So these kind of things need to be avoided. So they need to be enabled, empowered, and they need to be clarities in the contractual agreement which assure their independency in their job and their ability to conduct their job according to the requirement without being influenced by side effects, like I named them, which are actually financial influence, or the fact that the CEO would say to the PRC, if they say we want to recall because of a problem that they got, like as a feedback, you are fired if you do that. Those kind of things should not happen. So the contract should empower the PRRC and ensure that the PRRC could do the job without being like influenced internally. And this you can put in writing, so there's no issue. And I think a lot of experts in the organization have such contract. As long as the payment is related to the salary and the decision are related to the unprofessional behavior of a person, that to say you are fired because you are not acting professionally, this is okay. As soon as you fire someone because they are doing their job accordingly, then the organization is not well organized and fulfilling the requirements.
So there was an interesting question from Christian Micheletti, which says exactly what you are talking about. They are saying, so he's saying, as internal PRRC, there is the balancing between day-to-day company running and strictly following regulation by the second. So do you have experience on this? And is there a line that is really not to be crossed? How can we defend ourselves from that? For example, not losing job as quality manager due to being a very strict PRRC.
Let me share with you experience, and I give it to Ronald just to give it to you.
Okay.
I think it will be always you will be always in a problem if you as a PRRC act as God in the organization. What you need to do, and this is my recommendation to every organization, you need to build an escalation, let's say, rule, where you say, in such a situation where I would need, for example, to recall, I don't take that decision alone. We take it as a team, and we document it, why we are taking that decision. So in case you get in such a situation, as a person responsible for regulatory compliance, you cannot be competent in every single field and you know everything. You need to involve your team. You need to call for a meeting, which is documented, and you take that decision. And then based on that, you are not acting just as one single person, but you are having actually a steering committee who's taking the decision and recommending measures to the CEO of the company.
So,
and I can add to that. In terms of escalation, I've had some PRCs reaching out to Emergo for help in difficult situations, and I used a 3-tier system of non-compliance. There's a big red line that you should not cross, and that is about public health. If you think there's a public health issue, then you should raise alarm. Then companies should be acting, and as a PRC, you can tell to management you should act, right? And then it's up to management to decide. As a PRC, you're not doing anything, but at least you raised the flag. But yeah, that's where you should be very clear. And then you have on the other end of the scale, you have administrative non-compliances where you can do nothing about, right? For example, even today, I got an email from a company. They wanted to be MDR certified, have everything ready, and suddenly the notified body says, "Yeah, sorry, we're not going to make it." Whose fault is that? Nobody's. Well, not from their company, but they will enter a situation where they go non-compliant. So what to do about that? They can't do anything about that. It's a non-compliance, administrative non-compliance. There's nothing wrong with the device, but it's forced upon them. And then you have a situation where a company did not act in time, and they enter a stage of an administrative non-compliance. Now, I think that's where you need to have your, how should I say, as a good PRC, you should start warning well in advance that there could be a problem, and that's exactly where you get these issues with the legacy devices, for which the PRC is not necessary. When with legacy device, when should you start giving these head warnings? That could be a problem. So it's not a black and white thing. If you think something is going wrong, make sure you discuss it, make sure that others know about it, start thinking about possible solutions. More or less, at the moment you see a problem, start solving it together with the rest of your team, together with management.
So in terms of PRRC, so it's a new role, as we said. So before that, there was the role of management representative under ISO 13485. There is the pharma industry that has also the responsible person. So now we have PRRC also for medical devices. So where do we see evolving this role? So where exactly, now we have some rules for PRRC. So what will be, if I can say, the future of PRRC? So is there already some kind of evolution where we say we should go in that direction for this kind of role?
Well, when they started discussing the PRC or a similar role, the rulemaker started with the responsible person from pharmacy. But quickly they discovered that you can't do that. It's a different type of product with completely different regulations and rules, and completely different characteristics. So you can't. So it starts to shift. And it starts to shift towards the management representative. Now, I don't know about you, but most management representatives are not really very effective, right? It's not. I'm not really happy with how that works in practice.
Okay.
And where I think we should be heading towards is what I already said: the DPO, the Data Protection Officer. That's an interesting role. It's well defined in the guidance documents, and that's where I think we can find inspiration of where into which direction this should be developing. And I think that TEAM-PRRC will try to give that push to that role, because I think there you have a role which is, first of all, making sure that everybody understands the rules. Because it starts with that. If you don't understand the rules, how can you be compliant? And then make sure that if you understand the rules, do you apply the rules correctly? And if not, okay, what to do about it? How can you improve? And if that doesn't work, okay, then it's time to raise a flag. And that's basically what you see with the DPO. And I think that's a very good way of making sure that medical devices are compliant. Bassil?
Yeah, I think you said everything which is relevant here for the future. But I think the PRRC role should not be seen as a burden with an organization. It should be seen as a potential for continuous improvement and the potential for actually risk control, which is not understood by a lot of operation. And this role should be also the prolonged arm of the top management to say, I have the responsible person who can report to me if there is a negative signal, who can report to me where I can improve, who can share with me the status of my organization on a regular basis and assure that I'm doing all possible to protect the healthcare system. And I think this is important. This is what the understanding, the clarity within the organization should be the future which we are looking for. And this would enable us to get more a better system, let's say it from that way, because everyone says we asked the notified bodies, they did the assessment, they didn't see the problem that we had. if you see the problem by yourself, you need to correct. Notified bodies or authorities, all their job is based on sampling base, so they don't do 100% assessment of everything. And this is why you need to make sure that you learn from from your own organization via your PRC, because this is the reality that you're going to be facing, and this is what's going to lead to better improvement in the future.
Right.
Yeah. Just three examples. We have seen the Volkswagen diesel, where management said, "Oh, we didn't know about that." We've seen Boeing, where there were huge issues in the safety of a new design for a plane, and management said, "Oh, we didn't know that." And now we have Philips, which is also having huge problems. That's a medical device company, and yeah, it's legacy devices. No PRC there. Hooray! I think in the future we should not have the situation where management says, "Oh, we didn't know." If you have a good PRC, you knew, and you took a decision to ignore a signal. And that's something that will be hanging over the head of management, and that will make it easier for them to choose for the safety of the patient instead of shareholders' value. And I think that's I mean, it's a bit cynical, but I think that's where hopefully the role of the PRC will move towards. And in the long term, it will be beneficial for companies if they do that. It's their long-term insurance.
Yeah.
So if we can say that, so PRC will be, if I can say, an important role. We have, I mean, it is an important role already from what we heard today. So we have companies that should have a PRC within their organization. If they are a small company, they can hire also a consultant. So now the question I have is more about, I am a consultant. Can I be a PRC for multiple companies at the same time? And I heard your answer, Bassil, about the amount of hours, etc. So as you said, as soon as we are representing maybe 100 companies, then the bells start to ring. So is there something that I can say that it's normal, it can be fine if I represent 10 companies, but as soon as I start to represent 15 companies or 20 companies, it starts to be a bit of a problem here?
So my recommendation to you, if you are delivering such services, that you actually look to the companies who are sending you a request to see how many products do they have, what are the product class that they have. You need to define also how you're going to cover your oversight on their quality, regulatory, clinical, post-market, and so on. I mean, if you have established product, the post-market surveillance signals are very low. If you have a completely new innovative product, you will have to work with them every 3 months on the data. You look to signals, you have to watch it very carefully because it's important. And based on that, you're going to define how much of your time you would need to be available for them. Is it 1 day per week? Is it actually 5 days per week? And depending on the organization. And based on that, and based on your additional business that you are delivering as a consultant, you need to say, how many hours do I have remaining as one single person to deliver those services for other customers? And this is where I saw a lot of organizations not thinking about these kind of things. They are taking all the business and then recognizing I'm one single person. And then when a manufacturer is sending you a request because they have an issue, they are not reacting or not available. And they tell them, we can discuss that in 2 months. And then, like Ronald was mentioning, there is a public health issue. You can't wait for 2 months because the requirement is immediate reaction. And this is very important. And I know that some authorities, so not every authority started with this, but some authorities started auditing PRRCs, and they started looking to especially those organizations delivering PRRC service to see how many customers they have, what are their criteria to select customers, and how they are making sure that they have enough time to support those customers. This is why my recommendation, don't sell the business like a wide business. Make sure that you consider your capacity and your ability to support those customers, and keep always a buffer for ad hoc requests. And calculate that, learn over the first year how much you would need, and build additional capacity or free up your capacity to be able to help your customers.
No, I think it's great. And so Ronald, also another question for you maybe. So you are I mean, you are acting as a PRRC. I mean, you are doing that with the Emergo. I think you will do that also with your new organization. So you are located in the Netherlands. So can you act as PRRC for a company that is located in Spain and one that is located in France, one in Germany, one in Italy, etc., as long as they are in the European Union? So can you act as a PRRC for all those locations, even if you are not in place?
Yeah. If it falls within my scope, if it falls within my capacity, yes, I can work for EU-based companies. I can even work for Swiss-based companies. Swissmedic allows for European EU-based PRCs to work for Switzerland. I cannot work directly for non-European companies, not in the UK, not in the US. But what I can do, and that's something that I'm currently discussing with quite a large organization, is assisting their PRC team. And so they want to have that PRC team just buffed up with someone they can ask any question outside the organization, so they can be very discreet. And that looks like an interesting role of not being a real PRC, but very close to the PRC team, and taking all the being involved in the way a PRC is thinking, and that's something that we haven't discussed today. But I want to add that we're almost at the end of the of this presentation. Before I worked for Emergo, I worked for a competent authority as an inspector. And then I had done inspections, and I knew at that moment I was the Dutch citizen, the best informed about the safety and quality of the devices in that organization at that moment. Was I prepared just to leave the company and close the door behind me, or not? Would I allow my loved ones to be exposed to their device? I always ask that question to myself, and that is a very humbling experience. So as a PRC, that's something you need to do. You need to think about, what do I think about the safety and performance of this device? And I think it's a unique position to be in. It's a unique role, and it helps you a lot in your personal development as a regulatory person. So I think from that perspective, if you're not yet a PRC, we are considering it, go for it.
Yeah, I agree. A last question maybe, and thanks for Sylvia for sending that. So how can you demonstrate you fulfill your PRC duties? So you know that on the PRC, there is the list to say you have to verify technical files and declaration of conformity that are in place. You have to verify that the product that is on the market is okay. You have to verify that the post-marketing surveillance is done correctly, etc., vigilance, etc. So how are you confirming that you are doing that? I know that I had this discussion also with you, Ronald, when we were in Barcelona. So the question is mainly how practically you can demonstrate to an authority or notified body that you are doing the job that we are asking you to do.
Shall I start? Then Bassil, you have the last word here. I'm sure you will.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, it says that you are responsible, that technical files is checked, or the drawing up of technical files. You're responsible. It happens. You're not doing it yourself. You're not checking yourself. It doesn't say that. You can check yourself, but it doesn't say that you have to. You're responsible for that. And from that perspective, I say, well, it's about training, it's about setting up, it's about making sure that everybody understands their responsibilities. And then if it's done, you can do some checks on a sampling basis. Does it work like that? Does it actually work? And then you can say, well, I trained, I checked, it looked good. I think I fulfilled my duties. But I think Bassil may have a completely different approach here, and I'm curious to hear.
Yes, no. So your principle is not wrong, Ronald. So I would just take it from a different perspective. You're going to be audited by organization. What they audit is what you wrote down. So you need to write down what is the duties and the responsibility. And do me a favor, don't copy paste the regulation as it is. Yeah. Say under point A, this is the requirement, and this is how we fulfill the requirement. if you describe how you're going to meet it, and you can have multiple possibilities to meet the requirement, like you said, Ronald, you can say, I do this that way, this is how I do it in an organization. Define your process, define how you're going to meet those obligations, define how you're going to document that you have done your job, and then you're going to be audited against that. And if it is effective, then you can say, I was actually doing my job according to the applicable law, and I proved the effectiveness over the time. If you are actually getting always problem, then your method was not effective, and then you need to make sure that you improve it and you change it. So this is my recommendation. Create a process, describe how you're going to do it, fulfill what you are doing, document that, and then you are in some safe side, and nobody going to be blaming you for your job.
Great. So thanks for that. I think we have covered most of the question that we had about that. I just wanted maybe a last wording from you, just about what is maybe something that you would say to the EU Commission or to the people that are regulating this role of PRRC. What's the thing that is still unclear for you, and that you maybe say, can you clarify, or can we have a clarification about this and that? Or it's clear, but it's wrongly interpreted. So do you have some of those elements in mind to say, oh, if I had somebody from the Commission, here is what I will tell them first, so that it works? Because I know that more we are involving the MDCG or the Commission, more there is unclarity sometimes. So the point is, what can be the things that we want to clear here? So maybe first from you, Bassil.
So from my point of view, what I would recommend, first of all, not just to the Commission, I would recommend to the member state, consistent interpretation of the requirement and the clear recipe, because currently everyone is getting misled by various interpretation and the various expectation on the various member states level. So clarity, harmonized interpretation across all member states. This is my recommendation for everyone.
Great, thank you. And you, Ronald?
Yeah, I can join that. I think at this moment, TEAM-PRRC is not really recognized as a stakeholder yet, and I think that's a gap. We need to do something about that. And I really would like to see some clarity. What is continuously, permanently? What is being responsible for mean? So how can you actually demonstrate that? Because we may have some ideas about that, but I'm aware that there are differences between member states, and also that there are some member states that can put fines on PRCs if they're not performing, and others that say, "Oh no, we would never do that because we want to have, we want to protect the PRC." So yeah, there's no harmonization there between member states, and I think that makes it very difficult for PRCs to do their work properly.
Yeah, great. So really thank you, and I agree that there is so many interpretation, and we hope that there will be more clarity for each member states, and that they can provide great information. So thank you, Ronald. Thank you, Bassil, for this. All this information was really interesting. And just to answer to Sanaz Naderi, yes, this is live recording. So next week I will release the replay of this on the YouTube channel. So don't hesitate to go on the YouTube channel, and you'll have all the videos that we are making here. So great. So thank you, Ronald. Thank you, Bassil, and I wish you all a nice weekend, and talk to you next week.
Same to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.